So the master, the guru, has many ways to teach. Guru literally means remover of darkness. And a guru doesn't have to only teach through words. A guru can teach through presence or through subtle action. And this story is about the third type of teaching. So I'm in India, and I'm doing one of the processes, which is called the eternity process. And in this process, you get to experience past lives. Now, remember my background: atheist, socialist, rationalist. So past lives for me was something that I never believed in. So, however, because I'd had experiences that had showed me that a lot of my beliefs were formed in a box, and I might have stayed there had it not been for the influence of other people to encourage me to experiment, I'd chosen to be more truly scientific in my approach, and that is to experience first with an open mind and judge second. So I'd carried that tendency over, and the more that I dared to experiment, the more that I'd found evidence for things which beforehand I would have deemed impossible, implausible, and the creations of hopeful people. So here I am, much to my surprise as much as anyone, doing this past life eternity process. And I'll be honest, I wasn't 100% convinced that there were past lives to be delved into and that I would discover anything. Yet when I went through the process, which took 4 hours, I was out deep and it felt like minutes. And yet in that time, I still remember when I came out of it and it was dark, and I said, "What time is it?" And she said, "It's 6:30. And I said, "You're kidding me." She said, "Yeah." And she asked me what had happened, and I told her what actually happened must remain a secret, other than to say that I had very clear impressions of a number of past lives, both human and not. And she had explained at the beginning that my master, Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, would be there throughout, guiding me through, so that I should always feel safe through this entire process. And I went away with a feeling of complete peace, because in this process some healing had occurred. I'd experienced that. And that was the whole intention to do it in the first place. Sometimes there are impressions that are carried over from a lifetime before this one that even techniques as powerful as Sudarshan Kriya meditation may not fully release. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes they can fully release them. But in my case, something was stuck, needed to be shifted. This shifted it. But I had a question. I was like, okay, it seems like past lives are pretty real. That seemed very incredibly realistic. Number 2, it seems likely that some healing has occurred. But number 3, come on, was Gurudev really there with me? And I had that thought with me as I went to satsang for that evening. I sat down several rows from the back at the far left-hand corner, because I was a little late getting there because of the length of the session. And we had this blissful satsang. We sung together, and then Gurudev was at the front, and he took questions and answers. And he said, "Okay," with the intonation that he always does when he's indicating it's time to wrap up. Right? No more questions. And then he said, "Oh, yes." And I'd never seen him do that before. After he said no more questions, or even that intonation, "Okay," that meant okay, no more questions. Didn't matter how many people's hands were raised, or how many people said, "Guruji, Guruji, what about me?" or words to that effect. But this time he said, "Ah, yes." And he answered the question. I was intrigued. Why is he doing something he never does? And I was very intrigued, so I listened. And the question was, "Gurudev, can you please tell us a little bit more about past lives?" And he said, yeah, past lives. It's no big deal. You know, energy, matter, Newton's law of thermodynamics, whichever one it is, I can't remember now. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So yes, energy passes on from one state to another, and so we shouldn't be greatly surprised by this. And there's a simple process called the eternity process. My ears started to prick up. He said, yeah, it's a very simple process. You can do it if you want to uncover some karamas that cannot be shifted through this life. Very simple, very natural, very easy, and very safe. I'll be there guiding you through the entire process. And then he does this. He turns his head sharply. He looks at the extreme left. He looks me right in the eye for a good 2 seconds. And then he looks back. Completely out of the blue, he turned his head 90 degrees, looked directly at me straight after that comment, then looked back. And I felt his gaze. And I'm like, okay. Okay, Master, I get it. You're here with me. You're here with us. And I will never doubt your presence again. So the Master has many ways to teach. And we cannot even begin to fathom the level at which he's operating, the knowledge that he has access to, other than to say that we shouldn't also be surprised, because consciousness is consciousness, and this which looks separate from you is illusory. We know this. This is quantum physics, right? This which looks very solid is not solid, it's just energy. And we are all part of that same universal energy field. And in that energy field, we are all connected. And it is possible to be connected to all knowledge. And this is what the great saints and the great seers throughout histories have been talking about and have been able to show by their example. And we only need to wake up and see that this is not something that we should be that surprised by even. But it's happening before our eyes all the time, that people are accessing this knowledge. And when we have a living master in our life, that is someone who, by their example, can show what is possible when total presence is there. Not to impress us, but to show us our own potential. So, Master will teach you. And the lessons, sometimes they're sweet, sometimes they're bitter, sometimes they're using words, and sometimes they're in perfect silence, just with a look. And they're all